In the very first chapters of humanity, there are names we all recognize: Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel. But hidden between the lines, there are also daughters, women whose lives were barely mentioned, almost erased. And yet without them, the story could not have continued. One of these forgotten figures is Azura. Her name means blue, like the sky after rain. She was the wife of Set, the son born after Abel's death. And while Cain built the first city, Azura built something quieter, a tradition of prayer whispered from mother to child, passed down until it shaped the very soul of humanity. That's where we begin tonight, in the silence of her camp, in the rhythm of her daily life, where history was carried not by kings or warriors, but by women whose names are almost lost. And if this kind of journey speaks to you, stories that are both ancient and calming, both curious and gentle, feel free to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, or subscribe for more. But for now, just settle in, dim the lights, take
A slow breath.
and let's step into the quiet world of Azura. Azura. Her name tastes like color, like a sky washed clean after the storm. A blue so soft it carries a promise that life, even after exile, can begin again. She is one of the forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve, a name barely whispered in apocryphal texts, erased from the official genealogies. But if we pause long enough to imagine her, she becomes the quiet heartbeat of an entire lineage. She lives alongside Set, the third son of Adam, and Eve, born after the loss of Abel, born to carry the weight of continuation. Yet Set's strength is not in conquest, not in invention. His world, and Azura's world with him, is built from repetition, grinding, weaving, milking, mending, storytelling. Small things, daily things. But these things form the architecture of humanity far more firmly than walls of stone. Picture the camp at dusk. No stone houses, no paved streets, just tents stitched from animal skins, smoke rising from low fires, and the bleating of sheep in the distance. The air smells of ash and milk, and the ground is warm from the heat of the day. Azura bends over a stone slab, grinding grain with steady circular motions. The sound is rough at first, then softer, as the flour begins to smooth. Her arms ache, but it is a familiar ache, almost comforting, because this is how life is sustained, one motion at a time. Set walks among the flock, his staff tapping against the earth. He is not a man of cities like his brother Cain, not a builder of walls or inventor of tools. He is a shepherd, content with cycles, grass sprouting, lambs born, the seasons turning again and again. He looks at Azura often as though to confirm that this simple rhythm is enough. And Azura, with her quiet strength, makes it enough. Their children play nearby. A small boy, Enosh, stacks stones into uneven towers and knocks them down again, laughing as if it were the greatest invention. His sister ties weeds into clumsy braids. The fire pops, sending sparks into the darkening sky, and Azura gathers the children to her side. The night is falling, and with it comes a time older than memory. The telling of stories. Eva is still alive then, an old woman with eyes that carry both sorrow and wisdom. She speaks slowly, her voice raspy from age, of the garden they once knew.
Rivers that shimmered like glass, trees that bent heavy with fruit, the sound of God walking among them in the cool of the day.
The children listen wide-eyed, imagining a world more colorful and abundant than anything they see around them. Azura listens too, her hand resting on Enosh's shoulder. These stories are not entertainment, they are inheritance. But Azura adds something of her own. When the fire dims, when the children curl against her side, she whispers words not of Eden past, but of hope present. Short words, simple words, gratitude for bread, for fire, for breath. Enosh stirs in her lap, repeating clumsily what she says. "Thank you," he lisps. "Life, Lord." It is awkward, half play, but Azura smiles. She knows habits are born like this, slowly, quietly, in repetition. In time, Enosh will be remembered as the first to call upon the name of the Lord. Historians and scribes will write that line without describing the scene, without mentioning who taught him. But we can imagine it. A child echoing his mother's whisper, turning it into a practice, then into a tradition, then into the first strand of a faith that will stretch through centuries. Meanwhile, far away, Cain and Avon are shaping another kind of inheritance. Their city hums with noise, the clang of bronze, the scrape of stone, the crackle of primitive music. Avon watches her children invent instruments from bone, bend metal into tools. The air there is heavy with smoke, sharp with ambition. Progress is visible, audible, tangible. But in Set and Azura's camp, progress is measured in something quieter. The steady hum of trust, the rhythm of prayer blending into the rhythm of breath. Two worlds rising at the same time, one loud, one soft. Now close your eyes and imagine Azura at the end of a long day. She sits on a smooth stone while the fire burns low, only embers glowing now. The children lean against her, their hair smelling of smoke and dust. Above her the stars are sharp, infinite, untouched by the noise
of cities.
She breathes out slowly, and in that exhale is both grief for what was lost and gratitude for what remains. This is how the story of humanity continues, not only through walls and weapons, but through whispers and songs, not only through names carved into record, but through the names never written, the women whose voices are woven into silence. Take a breath with her. Feel the slowness, the steady calm. The story has only just begun, but already it is carrying us into a rhythm soft enough for sleep. Enosh. His name means frailty, mortal man. From the start, it carried the reminder that humanity was fragile, a breath of life sustained by grace. And yet, through this fragile child of Azura and Set, something lasting and extraordinary would take root, the first act of calling on the name of the Lord. Picture him as a boy, his hair tangled by the wind, his hands busy with smooth stones. By the riverbank, he stacks them into wobbly towers, then knocks them down again with a delighted laugh, as if recreating the rise and fall of worlds. Nearby, Azura watches with patient eyes. She doesn't instruct with stern lectures. Instead, she teaches in whispers, woven into the rhythms of daily life. "Say his name," she tells him softly, while grinding grain. The boy repeats it, clumsy, at first, the sound rough on his tongue. "Thank you," she murmurs while lighting the fire, and he echoes it, distracted but learning. Before sleep, as she drapes a blanket over him, she whispers a blessing. He doesn't always understand, but the cadence sinks in. Slowly, steadily, what began as mimicry grows into memory. Evenings become their schoolroom. Around the fire, the family gathers, the smell of smoke curling through the air. Adam and Eve themselves are still alive then, their voices heavy with age. Eve tells stories of the garden, of rivers that shimmered, of fruit heavy with sweetness, of the sound of God walking among the trees. Her eyes shine with both longing and regret. The children listen, wide-eyed, imagining a paradise they've never seen. But when Eve falls silent, Azura adds something different. Not just stories of the past, but words for the present. She teaches Enosh that the world, even in its brokenness, is still filled with reasons to give thanks. A fire that keeps them warm, bread that fills the stomach, the breath that rises and falls in his chest, gratitude as steady as heartbeat. And so, the habit takes shape. Enosh learns not only to hear God spoken of, but to speak to him himself. At first, it's a child's game, repeating words without weight. But over time, the repetition becomes conviction. And then something remarkable happens. Others begin to imitate him. Picture a twilight in the camp. The flock is gathered, the children are drowsy, the fire is glowing low. Enosh, no longer a small boy, lifts his voice. "Lord, thank you for this day." The words are simple, but they hang in the air like something solid. One person repeats them, then another. Soon it is no longer just Azura's whisper or Enosh's voice. It is a chorus. For the first time, the name of the Lord is invoked by a group, not just an individual. The first community prayer born in a quiet camp under the stars. Meanwhile, far away, Cain's descendants are inventing another kind of community. Their city is alive with clangs of metal and strains of music. Bronze is hammered into tools, bone carved into instruments. The streets are noisy with trade, disputes, laughter. Oven watches her descendants create the first stirrings of urban life. Their achievements loud and visible, but alongside progress comes pride, and alongside pride, violence. The air there is thick with ambition and smoke. The contrast is striking. Cain's line builds outward, walls, instruments, inventions. Set's line builds inward, habits, prayers, traditions. One leaves monuments of stone, the other leaves monuments of breath. Both are human, both necessary. But it is in Enosh's whispered prayers that something eternal begins. Close your eyes for a moment and hold the two scenes side by side. In the city, the hammer against the anvil, voices shouting, fire blazing. In the camp, a boy's steady voice.
Rising in thanks, a family echoing softly, the sound blending with the wind across the plain. Which sound carries farther? The clang of iron or the breath of prayer? Which one still lingers thousands of years later?
Azura smiles as she watches her son. She knows that what she planted has taken root. Enosh has become not only her child, but the beginning of a tradition. A fragile man with a fragile name, carrying the most enduring strength humanity has known. The habit of calling upon the Lord. Take a slow breath. Feel that fragility, but also that permanence. Small words whispered in the dark, shaping eternity. The seasons turn as they always do. Heat gives way to cool, rains soften the soil. Winter nights stretch long and dark. In that rhythm, Enosh grows not only in age, but in voice. What began as the echo of his mother's whispers now becomes his own song. Azura watches him carefully. She knows habits are like roots. They need time, repetition, and patience to take hold. And so, she continues to lace every moment with prayer. When she grinds the grain, she murmurs thanks. When she tends the fire, she blesses the warmth. When she lays down at night, she whispers into the silence. Enosh imitates these patterns, first out of routine, then out of conviction. Soon others. Notice, at meals he is the first to speak gratitude. At night, when the sky swells with stars, he is the first to lift his eyes. Children his age copy him. Elders nod approvingly. Slowly, what was once just his mother's private devotion spreads across the family like embers catching on dry grass, a spark becoming a flame. Picture one evening, the camp is gathered, the sheep huddled near the fires, the children restless with energy. Enosh, still young but no longer a boy, stands. His voice is steady, though quiet. Lord, thank you for the day, thank you for the bread, thank you for life. Simple words, no grand poetry, yet the effect is powerful. A silence falls, then one voice repeats his words, then another. Soon the fire crackles beneath a chorus of soft voices calling upon God. And there, under the vast and endless sky, the first community prayer takes shape, not written, not ritualized, but lived. This, more than cities or inventions, is the legacy of Set and Azura, a tradition of the heart. Meanwhile, in the lineage of Cain, a different legacy grows. His descendants are masters of invention. They craft tools of bronze and iron. They shape bone into instruments, strings stretched tight across wooden frames. Music fills their nights, songs pulsing through their streets. The clang of forges blends with laughter, with shouting, with quarrels. It is vibrant, loud, alive, but it is also fragile. Progress built on pride always is. The city's heart beats fast, driven by ambition, but ambition rarely rests. It demands more and more, until the noise itself becomes suffocating. Contrast that with the camp of Set. There is no rush, no walls, no smoke-filled skies. Their progress is slower, quieter, invisible. Yet what they are building will last far longer than bronze or stone, a habit of trust, a rhythm of prayer that flows like blood through the veins of generations. Now imagine the two worlds side by side. In Cain's city, glowing forges, rough music vibrating through the night, voices raised in trade and conflict, the air thick, the streets alive, every sense overstimulated. In Set's camp, the hush of grass shifting in the wind, the glow of a single fire, the low murmur of voices speaking God's name. No spectacle, only stillness. Two melodies rising at the same time. One is loud and temporary, the other is soft but eternal. Enosh does not set out to lead, but leadership finds him, not by command, but by example. His prayers, born in the arms of Azura, become the anchor of his people. For the first time in human history, faith becomes more than memory. It becomes tradition. One night, when the stars shine especially clear, Enosh turns to his mother. He remembers how she once whispered blessings over him as a child. Now he whispers them back. Azura closes her eyes, her heart full. What she began in weakness has become strength. What she planted in private has blossomed in public. The Bible records it simply. Then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. But behind that simple line are countless nights of repetition, countless whispers, countless ordinary gestures. The kind of work that never makes it into official records. The kind of work that mothers carry quietly, without recognition. Close your eyes. Hear the two sounds again. The clang of iron in the city, the hush of prayer in the camp. Which carries farther into the night? Which one settles deeper into your chest? Breathe slowly. Fragility, when given to God, becomes permanence. One of the strangest details in the early chapters of Genesis is the sheer length of human lives. Adam, the very first man, lived 930 years. His son Set, 912. Enosh himself reached 905. And then, of course, there was Methuselah, the grandfather of Noah, who lived 969 years, making him the oldest person ever recorded in the Bible. To us, accustomed to seeing 100 years as extraordinary, these numbers feel impossible, almost like myth. But in their world, longevity was the rule, not the exception. And this changed everything. It meant that traditions did not vanish with one generation. They had time, centuries of time, to sink deep. Imagine this. Azura, even as her hair grays and her face lines with age, is still alive to see not just her children grow, but her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, perhaps even further. She sits by the fire, surrounded by a small crowd of little ones, their faces lit by flames and starlight. She repeats the same words she once whispered to Enosh, and the children echo them in chorus. Her voice is slower now, her hands weaker, but the tradition is stronger than ever. It's not like our modern world, where family stories can vanish in a few decades, lost between generations. Here, one person's memory could span half a millennium. A single grandmother might see and shape 5, 6, 7 generations with her own voice. Faith wasn't passed through books or monuments. It was passed through presence, through living memory. Picture an evening, the camp settled, fires glowing, the air heavy with the scent of bread baking on stones. Azura sits close to the flames, her lap full of children. She tells them again of the God who gives breath, of the importance of calling on his name. Her voice is raspy now, but her eyes shine. The children repeat her words, some distracted, some sincere. And among them, perhaps a boy who will carry that memory into the future, as Enosh once did. This is the gift of longevity. A habit didn't need to be written to endure. It could live in voices repeated across centuries until it became part of the fabric of life. Meanwhile, in the line of Cain, longevity served a different purpose. His descendants also lived for centuries, but they poured their long lives into invention, into culture, into building the first city. Jabal, Jubal, Tubal-Cain, names linked to herding, to music, to metalwork. Generation after generation, they refined tools, songs, and techniques. Theirs was a legacy of progress, of art,
of innovation, and yet, alongside all of this, the violence grew.
Pride grew, ambition grew. Long lives gave them more time to perfect their crafts, but also more time to perfect their cruelty. The city grew louder, fuller, but also more restless. Two lines both stretched across centuries. One used time to forge tools, the other used time to forge trust. Now close your eyes and place yourself in that world of deep time. Imagine living not just one lifetime, but enough to see your great-great-great-grandchildren running around the fire. What would you pass on, knowing your voice might echo for hundreds of years? What habits would become your legacy? For Azura, the answer was clear. Her gift to the world was not invention, but prayer. Not progress measured in walls or instruments, but in whispers that could be remembered centuries later. That is why the Bible's simple phrase, "Then men began to call upon the name of the Lord," is so significant. It is the fruit, centuries of repetition, carried by the longevity of these early generations and rooted in the quiet teaching of a forgotten daughter. Breathe slowly now. Let the idea sink in. Sometimes the most powerful traditions are not the ones carved in stone, but the ones carried in breath, repeated over centuries, soft and steady as the heartbeat of humanity itself. Enosh is no longer a child. His shoulders are broader now, his voice deeper. The boy who once repeated his mother's whispers has grown into a man whose words others pause to hear. And what is remarkable is not that he invented something new, but that he continued something small, something Azura began in silence, that became, under his care, the first shared rhythm of faith. The Bible sums up his legacy in a single line. Then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. Simple, brief. But behind that line stretches an entire world of evenings, meals, and moments, each stitched with prayer. Picture the camp as the day winds down. The sun bleeds into the horizon, painting the sky in oranges and violets. Sheep shuffle into their pens, dust rising from their hooves. Fires crackle to life, their smoke carrying the smell of roasted grain. Families gather around, tired from the labor of the day but bound by its rhythm. Enosh rises. His movements are deliberate,
Unhurried, he lifts his voice. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for bread. Thank you for life.
There is nothing elaborate in his words, but the simplicity is the strength. One person echoes him, then another. Soon a dozen voices join, then more. The prayer rises like the smoke itself, thin, invisible, but rising toward the stars. This is how traditions are born. Not with declarations carved in stone, but with repeated words around shared fires. A small act multiplied until it becomes the identity of a people. Meanwhile, far away, the city of Cain hums with its own identity. His descendants hammer metal, shape instruments, build walls. The clang of bronze and the twang of strings echo through the streets. Progress is everywhere, tools sharper, music louder, buildings taller. But in the rush of invention, something quieter is lost. The name of God fades from their songs. Ambition fills the air as thick as smoke. The contrast is striking. Cain's line builds monuments of stone and sound. Enosh's line builds monuments of breath and silence. One leaves visible.
Ruins that archaeologists might one day study.
The other leaves no ruins, only echoes, but echoes that reach farther than bronze ever could. Imagine the two worlds side by side. In Cain's city, noise, energy, firelight spilling from forges, children chasing each other through narrow streets, music rough but exuberant. The air smells of metal and sweat. In Set's camp, stillness, stars sharp in the sky, a circle of families murmuring thanks as the fire glows low. The air smells of smoke and bread, two civilizations rising together. One loud, one soft, Enosh becomes the quiet center of his people. He does not seek power, but others look to him for words, for example, for steadiness. What Azura planted in him now blossoms into leadership. And leadership here is not domination, it is service. Service through prayer. Azura, older now, watches with pride. She remembers whispering those same words to him as a boy, his voice small and uncertain. Now the same words roll from his lips, steady and sure, carried by dozens of others. She sees her legacy not in monuments, but in echoes. And perhaps that is the hidden truth of history. The most enduring legacies are not the ones carved deepest into stone, but the ones breathed most consistently into air. Take a slow breath. Imagine yourself there, in the circle, the fire's warmth on your face, the stars pressing down from above. You hear the chorus of voices, simple and steady, rising with the smoke. You add your own whisper. Suddenly, you are part of the first tradition humanity ever shared. The clang of bronze in Cain City may one day fade into silence, but the sound of prayer, born in the lap of a forgotten daughter, whispered by a fragile son, will carry forever. Generations pass, children grow into parents, parents into elders, and the fires of the camp are tended by new hands. Yet one figure rises from the line of Set, whose story shines brighter and ends more mysteriously than most: Enoch. The Bible introduces him simply, but with a phrase unlike any other. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. No death is recorded, no burial mound, no final age carved into the genealogies. Just a walk so close, so constant, that one day it simply continued into eternity. But before that ending, there was a life. And like Enosh before him, Enoch was shaped by whispers that began with Azura. Prayer was no longer a novelty by his time. It was tradition woven into the rhythm of daily life. Yet for Enoch, it was more than words before meals or blessings before bed. For him, it became companionship. Picture him as a young man tending flocks under a vast sky. The grass shifts in waves, the air smells of earth after rain, and each step he takes is accompanied by a low murmur. Not always formal prayers, not always requests, sometimes just thoughts spoken aloud, as if to a friend walking beside him. I am tired today. The lambs are restless. Thank you for this breeze. His faith is not ritual. It is conversation, and that conversation begins to define him. While others pray at appointed times, Enoch carries prayer into every moment. While others feel God's presence in silence, Enoch feels it in footsteps, in shadows, in the beating of his heart. He doesn't simply call on the Lord. He walks with him. In the evenings, as families gather, Enoch's words feel different. There is a warmth in his tone, a gentleness in his eyes, as if he has been in constant company all day. People notice. Children listen more intently when he speaks. Elders nod, recognizing something unusual. His life becomes an open invitation, a reminder that closeness to God is not limited to ceremonies but can be lived step by step. Now place this beside the lineage of Cain. His descendants have grown in skill and artistry. They craft metal with precision. Their music is more complex, their cities larger. But with progress comes corruption. Violence spreads, pride thickens. The noise of the city grows louder, but the presence of God grows fainter. The streets echo with ambition, not with prayer. Enoch's life, by contrast, is almost invisible. By worldly standards, he doesn't build monuments, he doesn't invent instruments, he doesn't forge tools. But his legacy is carved in something stronger than stone, a way of living that turns every moment into communion. Imagine his final day. Perhaps it looks no different from others. The sun dips low, staining the horizon with crimson and gold. Enoch walks as he always has, murmuring softly, his staff tapping against the earth. The breeze stirs the tall grass. His steps slow, then silence. He is gone. Not collapsed, not buried. Simply absent. As if the line between earth and heaven was so thin for him that one day he simply crossed it without resistance. To those left behind, it must have felt both bewildering and comforting. Bewildering because no one had ever disappeared like that before. Comforting, because it proved what they had only half believed, that walking with God could be so real, so close, that death itself might not touch you. Enoch's story, brief as it is in the text, is a culmination of what began with Azura. Her whispers led to Enosh's prayers, which led to Enoch's companionship. A chain of faith passed from mother to child, growing stronger with each generation until it produced a man who lived so near to God that he never had to say goodbye. Close your eyes. Picture walking as Enoch did. Every step an act of faith, every breath a prayer, every silence filled with presence. Imagine not just moments of prayer, but a life that is prayer. That is what it means to walk with God. Take a slow breath. Let the rhythm of your inhale and exhale feel like footsteps, and imagine just for a moment that someone is walking beside you, steady and quiet, closer than your own shadow. Generations flowed like rivers, carrying with them both memory and forgetfulness. Some families remembered Azura's whispers, Enosh's prayers, Enoch's walk. Others drowned in noise and pride, building bigger cities, louder songs, sharper weapons. And then, into this divided world came a man named Noah. The Bible describes him in one line that makes all the difference. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among his generation. Noah walked with God. The echo of Enoch's life resounds here. The seed Azura planted had not vanished. Despite the chaos spreading around him, Noah carried within him the quiet rhythm of trust. Picture him as a boy. His family is simple, their camp small compared to the bustling city of Cain's descendants. Nights are spent around fire, listening to stories of ancestors. Adam and Eve in the garden, the tragedy of Abel, the mark on Cain, the mysterious disappearance of Enoch. These stories are not entertainment. They are warnings, lessons, anchors. And always, woven between them, are prayers. Gratitude before meals. Blessings at night. Invocations when storms rolled over the plains. The same habits Azura once taught her children. As Noah grows, he sees both worlds. He sees the line of Cain advancing in skill, building cities that shine with forges, ringing with instruments, buzzing with human invention. He also sees corruption spreading, violence, arrogance, selfishness, families broken, blood
Spilled, the image of God blurred in daily life.
The air of Cain's world is heavy with ambition and cruelty. And yet Noah chooses another rhythm. His family keeps to the quiet ways, preserving faith in simple gestures. His hands are rough from work, his back sore from labor, but his lips continue. The words pass down from Azura's line. Thank you for life. Thank you for breath. Thank you for mercy. This is why, when the unthinkable moment arrives, Noah is ready. The command is strange, absurd even. Build an ark, massive and unwieldy, in preparation for a flood that has never been seen.
Others would laugh, others would argue, others would dismiss the warning. But Noah, trained for generations to listen, to trust, does not hesitate. His heart is tuned, not to the noise of cities, but to the whisper of God. Imagine the scene. The
city of Cain is alive with fire and sound, voices raised in pride, builders striking iron, musicians playing until late night. Their legacy is dazzling but fragile. Then shift your gaze. Noah and his family, cutting wood, shaping beams, working slowly, steadily, day after day. The air smells of sap and sawdust. The rhythm of hammers is not for weapons or walls, but for salvation. And behind this obedience is a thread that stretches back centuries. Without Azura teaching Enosh to pray, without Enosh turning those whispers into community, without Enoch walking with God step by step, Noah might never have recognized the voice calling him. The ark itself is built on wood and pitch, yes, but beneath all that, it rests on the unseen foundation of women's whispers, children's echoes, and generations of quiet faith. Think of this. The survival of humanity hinged not on the brilliance of invention, nor the strength of armies, but on the endurance of tradition. A mother whispering over her child at night, a boy repeating words of gratitude by the fire, a man walking as if God were at his side. Without those habits, Noah would not have had ears to hear. Now breathe slowly. Picture the contrast again. In Cain's city, glowing furnaces, sharp tools, music loud and insistent, progress visible everywhere, but hearts drifting further from God. In Noah's camp, wood being cut, beams being shaped, the steady hum of labor accompanied by whispered prayers. Progress invisible to the world, but destined to outlast the flood itself. The ark rises not only from Noah's hands, but from the legacy of Azura. Her voice, almost erased from history, echoes in every plank. Her forgotten name lives on in the survival of all who came after. Close your eyes. Hear the steady thud of Noah's hammer, the creak of wood, the rustle of grass in the wind. This is the sound of salvation being prepared, not in grandeur, but in obedience, not in noise, but in trust. Humanity, even in its earliest chapters, was split into two melodies. One rose from Cain and Avan, the other from Set and Azura. Two legacies, two ways of shaping life. And what is most striking is not that one was right and the other wrong, but that both reveal something essential about us. Cain's line became the inventors, the city builders. They shaped bronze and iron, created music with strings and pipes, raised walls to mark territory. Their cities pulsed with energy, hammers striking anvils, forges blazing, children running through dusty streets, women weaving, men arguing loudly over trade. Avan, though nearly erased from memory, had been there from the beginning, bearing children, steadying Cain, raising a generation that would measure success in visible monuments. Set's line, by contrast, built nothing the world would marvel at. No city walls, no great inventions, no instruments of bronze. Their achievement was quieter, the birth of prayer. Azura's legacy was not progress measured in tools, but in trust. Her children and grandchildren learned to whisper gratitude, to lift their eyes to the sky, to call on God's name. What began as a mother's lullaby grew into a family's tradition, then into a people's identity. Place the two worlds side by side. In Cain's city, the air is heavy with smoke from forges, the clang of metal on metal ringing through the streets. Music echoes at night, rough, vibrant, almost defiant. People boast of new tools, new buildings, new songs. Progress is measured in what you can see, hear, and touch. In Set's camp, the air smells of bread, baking on stones, of sheep. Huddled near fires, the sound is softer, children laughing, prayers murmured, wind moving gently through tall grass. Progress is invisible, measured not in walls but in words, not in invention but in invocation. Which legacy is stronger? It depends on how you measure strength. The city dazzled with its brilliance, its creativity, its noise. But when violence spread, when pride hardened, When judgment came in the form of floodwaters, it was not the city that endured, it was the whispers. And yet, it would be unfair to dismiss Cain's line entirely. Their inventions mattered, their music carried beauty, their tools shaped survival. Humanity needs both, the visible and the invisible, the external and the internal. Progress without faith is hollow. Faith without action can become fragile. Together they form the tension of what it means to be human. Think of your own life. Aren't we all caught between these two melodies? On some days, we live like Cain, children, busy, ambitious, measuring our worth in what we build or achieve. On other days, we live like Set's children, quiet, reflective, seeking meaning beyond the noise, whispering gratitude into the silence. Both live inside us, pulling at us in different directions. Azura and Avan, though forgotten in the official text, are symbols of this duality. Avan represents the will to survive in the visible world, to raise a family in exile, to plant the first city. Azura represents the will to survive in the invisible world, to anchor life in prayer, to plant trust across centuries. One daughter gave us tools. The other gave us tradition. Neither woman's name was preserved in Scripture, but their legacies live on in every city street, in every whispered prayer. Two halves of the same humanity. Close your eyes for a moment. Hear both sounds, the clang of hammers, the music of strings, the bustle of a city alive, and beneath it, the murmur of prayer, the sigh of gratitude, the hush of faith under the stars. Two melodies, both human, both ours. Take a slow breath. Feel the tension, but also the balance. To be human is to live with both Cain and Set inside us, ambition and faith, invention and trust, noise and silence. The question is not which we will hear, but which we will follow. When we read the earliest pages of Genesis, something curious happens. The text moves quickly through centuries, carefully recording the names of fathers and sons. Adam lived so many years and begot Set. Set lived so many years and begot Enosh. Enosh lived so many years and begot Kenan. Line after line, a list of men, of numbers, of lifespans. And then, almost as a whisper, one brief sentence. Adam had other sons and daughters. That's it. No names, no stories, no details, just a passing acknowledgement, like a shadow in the corner of the page. And yet without those daughters, the story itself could not have continued. Cain would not have found a wife. Set's line would not have grown. Humanity itself would not have multiplied. The text chooses silence. But silence does not mean absence. Imagine the life behind that silence. While the names of men are counted, like tallies, the unnamed daughters are the ones carrying water, kneading bread, teaching children, tending fires. Their stories unfold in kitchens of clay, in fields of grain, in the quiet labor of sustaining life. They are the invisible root system beneath the visible tree. Without them, the tree would wither. But the root rarely makes it into the record. Picture an ancient scribe hunched over parchment, a flickering oil lamp casting shadows. He scratches line after line. So-and-so lived, begot and died. Numbers and names, a ledger of lifespans. Behind him, outside the tent, women grind flour, wash clothes in the river, hush children to sleep with lullabies. Their labor hums like background music, but the scribe's pen does not pause for it. History remembers the trunk, not the roots. The silence of the Bible, then, is not emptiness. It is a reminder of how history is always written, from the top, down, by those in power, for those considered important. The women's names vanish, but their work endures. And in this way, Azura and Avan become symbols of all the unnamed women who carried humanity forward without recognition. Think about it. Without Avan, Cain's exile might have ended in despair. She steadied him, bore his children, and helped build the first city. Without Azura, Set's line might have drifted into silence. She taught Enosh to pray, turning fragile breath into tradition. Without the other daughters, there would be no generations at all. The text is silent, but reality is loud. And perhaps that's the point. Faith itself is sustained not by what is written, but by what is lived. The prayers whispered in tents, the meals shared by firelight, the blessings passed from mother to child. These are the true foundation of the story. Scripture records the names of kings and prophets, but God's plan has always been carried just as much by the quiet, the hidden, the unnamed. Now think of your own life. How many people who shaped you will never be written into books or carved into stone? A grandmother who cooked meals every Sunday. A mother who stayed awake when you were sick. A teacher who encouraged you in a single sentence. They will not appear in official records, but their influence is real, shaping who you are. In the same way, the forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve are hidden architects of the human story. Close your eyes and imagine their silence. Not empty silence, but full silence. The crackle of fire, the grinding of grain, the murmur of lullabies, the soft prayers whispered over sleeping children. That silence is the heartbeat of history. So when the text says only, Adam had other sons and daughters, let us hear the chorus behind the line. Generations of women, unseen but indispensable. Invisible in the record, but unforgettable in the rhythm of life. Take a slow breath. The silence speaks louder than words, and so, gently, we reach the end of our journey. Not with a shout, not with a grand conclusion, but with the quiet exhale of a story that has been waiting to be heard. We began with Azura, her name like the sky after rain. A woman barely mentioned, yet the one who whispered prayer into her son, Enosh's ears, until it became a tradition strong enough to shape the future of faith. We remembered Avan, too, wife of Cain, who bore the burden of exile, who steadied a man marked by violence, and whose descendants built the first city. One daughter gave humanity its tools, the other gave it its prayers. Neither's name appears in the Bible's official record, and yet without them the record would not exist. Through them we saw how history is written. The genealogies record the men, the numbers, the lifespan. But beneath those lines are the unnamed lives, the women who fed, carried, taught, comforted. The other sons and daughters who remain anonymous are not empty space in the story. They are the soil in which the story grew. We followed Enosh, frail in name but strong in legacy, as he stood by the fire and spoke words of gratitude that others began to echo. We watched the first community prayer take shape, not as a ritual carved in stone, but as voices rising with smoke under the stars. We walked with Enoch, who turned prayer into constant companionship, until one day he simply stepped into eternity. And we saw Noah, steady and obedient, building an ark not only of wood, but of generations of faith passed down from Azura's whispers. Two legacies unfolded in parallel. The line of Cain, loud, inventive, creative, filled with cities, tools, and music. The line of Set, quiet, faithful, carrying prayer like breath, teaching trust from parent to child, both human, both necessary, and both still living inside us. Think of your own days. There are times when you are like Cain's descendants, busy, ambitious, noisy, measuring life in what you build or achieve. And there are times when you are like Set's descendants, quiet, reflective, seeking meaning in silence, whispering thanks into the air. The daughters of Adam and Eve remind us that both are part of being human. But they also remind us that what is unseen is often what lasts. Now close your eyes. Picture the final scene. Two fires, far apart but burning at the same time. In Cain's city, forges glowing, hammers striking, music echoing through narrow streets. Avon, her hair white with age, watching her children and grandchildren fill the air with noise and invention. She knows her legacy is loud and visible. In Set's camp, the stars stretching endless across the sky, families gathered in a circle, voices low in prayer. Azura, also old, sitting with children nestled at her side. She whispers the same words she has said for centuries, and the little ones repeat them, sleepy but sincere. Her legacy is soft and invisible, but it is what will carry humanity through. The flood to come, 2 daughters, 2 fires, 2 legacies, both forgotten in the record, both essential in reality. And perhaps this is the true lesson. The world remembers names carved into stone, but it is held together by names whispered in the dark. The story of humanity depends not only on the heroes in the text, but on the countless unseen lives that sustained the text itself. So as this journey closes, breathe slowly. Let your shoulders sink. Think of the whispers you have inherited, the stories told to you as a child, the gestures of care, the traditions handed down. Think too of the whispers you are leaving behind, whether in children, friends, or in the small habits that ripple outward. The forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve remind us that history is not only written in books, it is written in the ordinary, in the daily, in the soft silence of lives lived faithfully. If the blanket slips, pull it closer. If the night feels long, turn your face to the stars. And if sleep comes, let it. The story is complete. The whispers remain.